The rain fell over Chicago like a verdict no one could escape. Marcus DeLuca stood at the head of his dining table, the chandelier above casting golden light over 11 faces he had trusted with his life. 11 men, 11 years of loyalty, and somewhere among them a serpent wearing the skin of brotherhood. She watched from the kitchen doorway. Clara Reyes had been working in the DeLuca estate for 3 months now, hired as a private chef after losing everything in a fire that consumed her. Restaurant and nearly her spirit. She was supposed to be invisible. Staff always were in houses like this. But tonight, invisibility felt like a curse she could not shake. The tension in the room pressed against the walls like a living thing. Marcus held a folder in his hands, photographs spilling across the mahogany surface. Clara could not see what was in them, but she could see the effect they had on the men. Some shifted in their seats, others froze entirely. One man, seated closest to Marcus, reached for his glass of whiskey with a hand that trembled. Marcus noticed everything. That was what made him dangerous. That was what made him alive. He was not what Clara had expected when she first arrived. The rumors painted him as a monster, a king of shadows who ruled the underground with an iron fist and a colder heart. But in 3 months, she had seen him read bedtime stories to his 7-year-old niece, Sophia. She had watched him pay for the medical treatment of a gardener's sick mother without ever mentioning it. She had heard him laugh, genuine and warm, at terrible jokes told by old men who had known him since he was a boy. And now she watched him become the man the rumors spoke of. 3 weeks ago, Marcus said, his voice low and controlled, someone fed information to the Moretti family about our shipping routes. That information cost us $2 million and the lives of 4 good men. Men with families, men who trusted that this table kept no secrets from them. He paused. The silence was absolute. I asked questions, I followed threads, and tonight I have answers. He placed his palm flat on the photographs. Someone in this room sold us out. Someone in this room looked me in the eye and lied. Clara felt her chest tighten. She should leave. She should return to the kitchen and pretend she had heard nothing. That was the rule in places like this. See nothing, hear nothing, survive. But her feet would not move. A man at the far end of the table stood abruptly. His name was Vincent Carbone, and he had been with Marcus since the beginning. Boss, you know me, 20 years. I would never... Sit down, Vincent. Marcus did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Vincent sat. I am not here to accuse without proof. That is not how I operate. That is not how my father operated before me. Marcus reached into the folder and withdrew a single photograph. He held it up for the room to see. This was taken 6 days ago, outside the Moretti warehouse on South Halstead. Do any of you recognize the man in this picture? Clara strained to see. The photograph showed a figure in a dark coat, face partially obscured but unmistakable in posture and build. The room remained silent. Marcus set the photograph down and looked at each man in turn. His gaze was methodical, patient, devastating. When it reached a man named Anthony Russo, seated 3 chairs to his right, it stopped. Anthony was younger than most at the table, early 30s, with a sharp jawline and eyes that always seemed to be calculating. He had risen quickly through the ranks, praised for his intelligence and his ambition. Clara had served him dinner dozens of times. He always said please and thank you. He always asked about her day. Now his face was the color of ash. Anthony, Marcus said softly, do you have something you want to tell me? The moment stretched. Clara watched Anthony's throat work as he swallowed, watched his hands grip the edge of the table, watched the precise instant when his mask crumbled and the truth spilled out like water through broken glass. It was not supposed to go this far, Anthony whispered. They said no one would get hurt. They promised. They promised? Marcus repeated the words like they were poison. The Morettis promised, and you believed them. They have my sister. Anthony's voice cracked. They took her 2 months ago. Said they would kill her if I did not cooperate. I had no choice, Marcus. I had no choice. The room erupted, men shouting, chairs scraping, accusations and denials flying like shrapnel. But Marcus remained still, a stone in the center of a hurricane, his eyes never leaving Anthony's face. Clara pressed herself against the doorframe, heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. This was not her world. This was not her fight. She was a chef, a woman who had lost everything and was just trying to rebuild from the ashes. But something in Anthony's desperation called to her. Something in his shattered expression reminded her of her own face in the mirror after the fire, after the insurance company denied her claim, after she realized she had nothing and no one left. Enough. Marcus raised one hand, and the room fell silent instantly. "Anthony, look at me." Anthony raised his head. Tears streamed down his face. "Did you kill those men yourself?" "No, I swear. I only gave them the route. I did not know they would, but they did, and you kept silent. For 2 months you sat at this table, ate my food, took my money, and said nothing." Marcus leaned forward. "Where is your sister now?" "I do not know. They move her. Different locations. They send me proof she is alive, but I never know where." Marcus nodded slowly. He turned to the man on his left, an older soldier named Dominic with silver hair and scarred hands. "Dom, take Anthony to the East Wing. Keep him comfortable but contained. No one speaks to him until I say otherwise." Dominic stood, gesturing for Anthony to rise. Anthony went willingly, his shoulders slumped, his spirit visibly broken. As he passed Clara in the doorway, his eyes met hers for a single second. She saw regret there, and fear, and something that looked almost like relief. The room began to empty after that, men filing out with murmured conversations and backward glances. Clara remained frozen, unsure whether to flee or wait. The decision was made for her. "You." Marcus's voice cut through the lingering tension. "Chef, come here." Clara's blood ran cold. She stepped forward on legs that felt made of water, stopping a few feet from the table. This close, she could see the lines of exhaustion on Marcus's face, the weight he carried in his shoulders, the barely controlled fury simmering behind his calm exterior. "How much did you hear?" She considered lying, considered playing the part of the oblivious servant who noticed nothing and remembered less. But something in his gaze told her lies would be pointless. Everything, from the beginning. He studied her for a long moment. "And what do you think?" The question surprised her. No one in her position was ever asked to think. They were asked to cook, to clean, to disappear. Opinions were not part of the job description. "I think he believed he was protecting someone he loved," she said carefully. "I think desperation makes people do terrible things. And I think you already knew who the traitor was before you asked the question. You just wanted to see if he would be honest." Marcus's expression shifted, not quite a smile, but something close, something that acknowledged she had seen more than he expected. "You are perceptive, Clara. That is either very valuable or very dangerous in this house." He rose from his chair, moving toward the window that overlooked the rain-soaked gardens. "Do you have family? Anyone who could be used against you?" "No. My parents died when I was young. No siblings, no husband, no children." She paused. "I had a restaurant, that was my family, and it burned." He turned to look at her. "The fire on Montrose Avenue. I read about it. Arson, they said. Never caught the person responsible." She felt her throat tighten. "No, they never did." "Do you know who did it?" The question hit her like a physical blow. No one had ever asked her that. The police had taken her statement and moved on. The insurance company had denied her claim and closed her file. Everyone assumed she was just another victim of random violence in a city that bred it like rats. But Clara knew. She had always known. "Yes," she said quietly, "I know exactly who did it." Marcus held her gaze for a long moment, something passing between them that she could not name. Understanding, perhaps. Recognition. The shared knowledge of what it meant to have enemies you could not touch and wounds you could not heal. "Then you understand," he said finally. "You understand what it means to sit across from someone who has taken everything from you and smile because the time for justice has not yet come." She nodded. "Good." He turned back to the window. You will continue your work here. You will forget what you heard tonight. And if anyone asks, you will tell them the chef knows nothing except recipes. Can you do that? Yes. Then go. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. Clara turned to leave, but his voice stopped her at the door. One more thing. The man who burned your restaurant. Do you want him found? She felt her heart stop. What? I have resources, people who can find anyone anywhere. If you want answers, I can get them for you. Consider it compensation for your discretion tonight. For a moment, she could not breathe. For 2 years, she had buried that desire, told herself that justice was impossible, that moving forward meant letting go. But here was a man offering her the one thing she had never allowed herself to want. Why would you do that for me? Marcus smiled then, a real smile. That transformed his face from intimidating to almost handsome. Because loyalty deserves reward, and because I have learned that the people who survive in this world are the ones who never forget what they lost. You have not forgotten, Clara. I can see it in your eyes. She swallowed hard. If you can find him, I want to know. I want to look him in the face and ask him why. Then you will have your answer. Now go. Clara left the dining room with her mind spinning and her heart racing. She did not know what she had just agreed to. She did not know what path she had set herself upon. But for the first time in 2 years, she felt something other than grief and resignation. She felt alive. Outside her small staff quarters at the back of the estate, she paused to watch the rain. The city lights of Chicago glowed in the distance, a million stories playing out in a million windows. Somewhere out there, the man who had destroyed her life was living his own story, probably believing he had gotten away with it. He was wrong. And somewhere in this house, a young woman named Sophia was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the darkness that swirled around the adults who protected her. Clara had met the child on her first day, a bright-eyed girl with curly black hair and a laugh that could fill any room. Sophia had immediately decided that Clara was her new best friend, following her around the kitchen and asking endless questions about ingredients and cooking techniques. It was Sophia who had made Clara stay when every instinct told her to run. Sophia who had reminded her that even in places built on secrets and shadows, innocence could survive. Clara entered her room, closed the door behind her, and sat on the edge of her narrow bed. Her hands were shaking. What had she just done? She had heard things no outsider should hear. She had been seen by a man who could not afford witnesses, and instead of erasing her, he had offered her a gift. It made no sense, unless it was a test. Unless he was watching to see what she would do with the knowledge, who she would tell, whether she could be trusted, or unless, beneath all the power and danger, Marcus DeLuca was something more than the monster the world believed him to be. Clara lay back on her bed and stared at the ceiling. Sleep would not come easily tonight. But that was fine. She had spent 2 years sleeping through her grief, numbing herself to survive. Maybe it was time to wake up. Maybe it was time to become someone who did, not just survive but fought back. The rain continued to fall outside her window, washing the city clean. Somewhere in the house she could hear the distant murmur of voices, guards changing shifts, doors opening and closing. The rhythm of the DeLuca estate, constant and controlled, a heartbeat of power that never stopped. She was part of it now, whether she wanted to be or not, and tomorrow everything would change. Check if you're already subscribed to this channel. Every week we bring stories that grip your heart and do not let go until the very last word. If you want to be here when the next chapter unfolds, hit that subscribe button now. You do not want to miss what comes next. Morning came grey and heavy, the rain from the night before leaving the grounds of the DeLuca estate shrouded in mist. Clara woke before dawn as she always did, her body trained by years of early kitchen starts to ignore the protests of exhaustion. She found the main kitchen already occupied. Dominic, the silver-haired soldier from the night before, sat at the breakfast counter with a cup of black coffee and a newspaper that looked decades out of place in the modern world. "Chef," he acknowledged without looking up. "Good morning." Clara moved to the industrial refrigerator, pulling out eggs and vegetables for the household's breakfast. Early start for you too. Never really stopped, long night. He folded the newspaper and fixed her with a gaze that was neither threatening nor friendly, neutral, assessing. The boss says you are solid. That true? I cook food. I mind my business. That is all I know how to do. Good answer. He took a long sip of his coffee. But that is not what I asked. Clara paused, a carton of eggs in her hands. What do you want me to say? Nothing you do not mean. That is the thing about this house, chef. Words matter, every single one. You say you are solid, I believe you. You say you are not sure, I respect the honesty. But you lied to me even once, and we have a problem. She met his eyes directly. I am solid. Whatever I heard last night stays in my head and nowhere else. I have no one to tell and nothing to gain by talking. Dominic studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. The boss was right about you. You have steel in your spine. Most people who stumble into situations like last night either panic or try to leverage what they know. You did neither. Panic does not solve anything. And leverage is just another word. For extortion, I am not interested in either. A ghost of a smile crossed his weathered face. How did a woman like you end up cooking for a family like this? Clara cracked eggs into a bowl, whisking with practiced efficiency. The employment agency sent me. I needed work. They needed a chef. It was supposed to be temporary. Everything is temporary until it is not. Dominic rose, taking his coffee cup to the sink. Word of advice, chef. That little girl, Sophia. She has taken a shine to you. That makes you important to people who matter. Do not take that lightly. I would never do anything to hurt Sophia. I know. That is why you are still here. He left without another word, and Clara stood alone in the kitchen, absorbing the weight of what he had said. In this world, being important to people who mattered was both protection and target. She would have to be careful. By 7, she had breakfast ready for the household staff. By 8, she was preparing a separate meal for the main family. Marcus did not appear, but Sophia bounded into the kitchen with all the energy of a child who had slept soundly through storms both literal and metaphorical. Clara! The girl climbed onto a stool at the kitchen island, her feet swinging. Mama says you might teach me to make pancakes today, can we? Please? Sophia's mother was Marcus's younger sister, Elena, an elegant woman in her late 20s who had married into the family from old Chicago money. Her husband had died 3 years ago in circumstances no one discussed, leaving her and Sophia under Marcus's protection. Your mama said that. Clara smiled, setting a glass of fresh orange juice in front of the girl. Then I suppose we have no choice. Pancake lessons it is. Yes! Sophia pumped her small fist in the air. Can we make them in shapes, like animals? Uncle Marcus likes the bear ones. He says they remind him of when he was little, and Grandma made them. Clara felt something twist in her chest. These small details, these glimpses of humanity beneath the armor of power, kept catching her off guard. Marcus DeLuca, feared throughout the city, had a favorite pancake shape because his grandmother made them. We can definitely make bear pancakes, Clara said, but first, you have to learn the basics. No jumping ahead. I know, patience is a virtue. Sophia recited it like a lesson learned by repetition. That is what Uncle Marcus always says. He says the people who rush always miss the important things. Your uncle is a wise man. He is the smartest person I know, and the strongest. Mama says he carries the whole family on his shoulders, but I told her that is silly because how would we all fit? Clara laughed, a genuine sound that surprised her. When was the last time she had laughed like that? I think your mama meant it differently. She means he takes care of everyone, makes sure everyone is safe and happy. Sophia nodded seriously. He does. He always makes sure I have what I need, and he tells the best bedtime stories. Did you know that? I did not. What kind of stories? Adventures about brave knights and clever princesses and dragons who are not really bad, just misunderstood. Sophia leaned forward conspiratorially. I think Uncle Marcus is secretly a knight, but do not tell him I said that, he would be embarrassed. Clara felt the twist in her chest deepen. How did a child maintain such innocence in a house built on secrets? How did she see a knight where the world saw a king of criminals? Maybe children saw what adults forgot to look for. The morning passed in a rhythm of cooking, cleaning, and Sophia's endless chatter. Elena appeared briefly to thank Clara for keeping her daughter occupied, her eyes tired but warm. The staff moved through their routines with practiced efficiency. The estate hummed with life, ordinary on the surface but charged with an undercurrent of tension that Clara could feel in her bones. Around noon, one of the guards approached her in the kitchen. A young man named Tony, who had always been polite but distant. "Chef, the boss wants to see you in his study." Clara's hands stilled over the vegetables she was preparing for lunch. "Now?" "Now." She wiped her hands on her apron, removed it, and followed Tony through the maze of hallways that made up the DeLuca mansion. She had been in many parts of the house by now, but never the study. That was Marcus's private domain, a place where the real business of the family happened behind closed doors. Tony stopped at a heavy oak door and knocked twice. A voice from inside called out, and Tony pushed the door open, gesturing for Clara to enter. The study was larger than she expected, lined with bookshelves and dominated by a massive desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of wood. Windows along one wall overlooked the grounds, the grey light of the overcast day casting everything in muted tones. Marcus sat behind the desk, but he was not alone. Two men stood, on either side of him, both in expensive suits, both radiating the quiet competence of people who had seen too much to be surprised by anything. "Clara," Marcus gestured to a chair across from him. "Please sit." She sat, keeping her posture straight and her expression neutral. Show no fear, show no weakness. She had learned that much in her years of building a business in a city that devoured the timid. "Thank you for coming. I apologize for the interruption to your day." He said it like she had a choice in the matter, which they both knew she did not. "These are my associates, Mr. Hendricks and Mr. Castellano. They have been looking into a matter we discussed last night." Her heart rate increased, but she kept her face calm. "The fire." "The fire," Marcus nodded. "You said you knew who did it. I need you to tell these gentlemen everything you know, every detail, no matter how small." Clara looked at the two men. Hendricks was older, with the bearing of a retired police officer or federal agent. Castellano was younger, sharper, with eyes that seemed to catalogue every movement she made. "Why?" she asked Marcus directly. "Why does this matter to you?" "Because you work in my house, because you have access to my family, and because I do not employ people whose pasts might come back to complicate my present." He paused. "Also, because what happened to you was wrong, and I have the ability to make it right." It was the second reason that made her believe him. The first was business. The second was something else. She took a breath and began. "His name is Gerald Whitmore. He owned the building my restaurant was in. I leased the space from him for 8 years, built my entire business there, and when my lease came up for renewal, he tried to triple my rent. I refused. I had documentation proving our original agreement included a renewal clause at a fixed increase. He had lawyers. I did not have lawyers, but I had the truth." "What happened?" Hendricks asked, his voice neutral. "He lost. The court ruled in my favor. The lease would renew at the agreed rate. He was furious, made threats, said I would regret embarrassing him." Clara's voice remained steady, but her hands had curled into fists in her lap. 3 weeks later, the fire. The investigators said it was electrical, but the building had been inspected 2 months before. Everything was up to code. I tried to tell them. They did not listen. "Did Whitmore have a history of this kind of thing?" Castellano asked. "I started looking into it afterward. Found 2 other businesses in buildings he owned that had similar fires after lease disputes. Both ruled accidental. Both resulted in the tenants losing everything." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "And you told the police this?" "I told everyone who would listen. No one cared. Whitmore has connections, old money, old favors. The kind of man who golfs with judges and donates to police charities. Clara felt the old anger rising, but pushed it down. I was just a woman who lost her restaurant. Nobody special, easy to dismiss. Silence filled the room. Then Marcus spoke. Hendricks, Castellano. I want everything on Gerald Whitmore. Financial records, property holdings, insurance claims, personal life, everything. I want to know what he had for breakfast every day for the last decade. Both men nodded and left without another word. Marcus turned his attention back to Clara. This will take time, but I want you to know that I do not forget promises and I do not make them lightly. If Gerald Whitmore destroyed your life, he will answer for it. Not through courts that failed you, through consequences he cannot buy his way out of. Clara felt tears threatening and blinked them back. I do not understand why you would do this. I am nobody to you. You are someone who was wronged and had no power to seek justice. That makes you exactly the kind of person I built my organization to protect. He rose and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. My father used to say that the measure of a man is not how he treats his equals, but how he treats those who cannot help him in return. You cannot help me, Clara. You have nothing I need, but you needed help. And now you work in my house. That makes you family in a way. Family. The word hung in the air like something sacred. I do not know what to say. You do not need to say anything. Just keep doing your job. Keep Sophia happy, and trust that I will. Handle the rest. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She had spent 2 years believing she would never have justice, never have answers, never have closure. And now a man she barely knew was offering all three. There is one more thing, Marcus said, turning to face her. Anthony, the man from last night. His sister is still missing. I believe his story about why he betrayed us. Desperation makes people do things they would never otherwise consider. I have seen it, too many times to doubt it. What will happen to him? That depends on what we find. If his sister is truly being held by the Morettis, we will get her back, and then we will have a conversation about consequences and redemption. His jaw tightened. I do not enjoy being betrayed, but I also do not condemn a man for trying to save someone he loves. The situation is more complicated than simple punishment can address. Clara nodded slowly. He seemed genuinely terrified and ashamed. He was both. That is why he is still alive. Marcus returned to his desk and sat down. You may go, Clara, but before you do, I want to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Of course. Do you think you can work in this house, knowing what you now know about us, knowing what we are and what we do? I will not hold it against you if the answer is no. I will provide you with enough money to start over somewhere else, references that will open any door. But I need to know if you are staying. Because you want to or because you feel trapped? It was the question she had been asking herself since last night, the question that had kept her staring at the ceiling for hours. I think, she said slowly, that the world I thought I lived in, the one where courts were fair and hard work was rewarded and good people were protected, that world never existed. I just wanted to believe it did. She met his eyes. This world, your world, it is honest about what it is. Power protects. Loyalty matters. Justice comes to those strong enough to claim it. I lost everything trusting in a system that did not care about me. Maybe it is time to put my trust somewhere else. Marcus held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded once, a gesture of acceptance and understanding. Then welcome to the family, Clara, truly. She left the study with her heart pounding and her mind clear. She did not know what the future held. She did not know if she was making the right choice. But for the first time in 2 years, she knew exactly where she stood. And that, she realized, was its own kind of freedom. The days that followed the confrontation settled into an uneasy rhythm. Anthony remained confined to the East Wing, his fate suspended while Marcus's people searched for his sister. The household moved with increased tension, every staff member aware that something had shifted, but uncertain what it meant. Clara threw herself into her work, finding comfort in the routine of preparation and execution. Cooking had always been her meditation, her escape, her way of creating order in a chaotic world. Now it also served as her disguise, the role that allowed her to exist in plain sight while observing everything. Sophia remained her constant companion in the kitchen, the girl's presence a bright spot in the shadowed atmosphere. Together they baked cookies shaped like stars and moons. They made soups that filled the house with warmth. They talked about everything and nothing, the child's. Innocent questions sometimes cutting closer to truth than any adult's interrogation. "Clara, why is everyone so quiet lately?" Sophia asked one afternoon, kneeling on a stool to watch Clara roll out dough. "Sometimes adults have problems they need to think about. When you are thinking hard, it is difficult to be chatty." "What kind of problems?" Clara considered her answer carefully. "Problems about trust, about figuring out who really cares about you and who is just pretending." Sophia nodded, wisely. "Like when Madison at school said she was my best friend but then told everyone I cried during the movie." "Exactly like that, but bigger, adult-sized." "That sounds hard. Maybe the adults need cookies. Cookies always help." Clara smiled. "I think you might be right. Should we make an extra batch for everyone?" "Yes, and we should put smiley faces on them so people remember to be happy." So they made 200 cookies with smiley faces, and Clara distributed them throughout the household, and for one afternoon the tension lifted just slightly. Even the guards smiled as they accepted their treats, momentarily disarmed by a child's pure intention. Marcus found her in the kitchen that evening, after Sophia had been taken to bed by Eleanor. "I heard about the cookies," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Sophia's idea. She thought everyone needed reminding to be happy. She is not wrong." He stepped further into the kitchen, looking tired, but more relaxed than she had seen him since that night. "My investigators found something. Anthony's sister. She is being held in a warehouse on the south side, moved every few days between locations. We have identified a pattern." Clara stopped wiping the counter. "You are going to get her back." "We are going to try. Tomorrow night." He ran a hand through his dark hair. "I wanted you to know because the house will be on lockdown. Extra guards, no one in or out. I need to know you will keep Sophia calm if anything seems strange." "Of course. I will tell her we are having an indoor adventure day. She will love it." Marcus smiled, a rare and genuine expression that transformed his face. "You are good with her. Elena says Sophia talks about you constantly. Clara made this. Clara said that. Clara is teaching me to make bread. She is easy to love, impossible not to care about. Yes, she is the only pure thing in this family, the only one untouched by what we do." His smile faded. "That is why I fight so hard to keep her separated from the darkness, why everyone here guards her with their lives if anything ever happened to her." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. "Nothing will happen to her," Clara said firmly. "Not while I am here." Marcus met her eyes with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I believe you. And that is not something I say lightly." They stood in silence for a moment, the air between them charged with something unspoken. Then Marcus straightened, the mask of the boss sliding back into place. "I should go, things to prepare, but Clara, thank you for what you do for Sophia, for what you did tonight with the cookies. Small gestures of humanity matter more than you know in a house like this." "I do what I can." "You do more than that." He paused at the doorway. "Whatever happens tomorrow, stay with Sophia. That is the only thing I ask." "I will. I promise." He nodded and was gone, leaving Clara alone with her thoughts and the lingering warmth of his presence. She finished cleaning the kitchen in a daze, her mind circling around the complexity of Marcus DeLuca. The man was a contradiction in human form, dangerous and gentle, ruthless and kind. He commanded an empire built on shadows, yet he worried about the happiness of a 7-year-old and the comfort of his household staff. What did it say about her that she found him compelling instead of repulsive? She thought about Gerald Whitmore, about the years she had spent dreaming of justice she believed she would never have. Marcus was offering her that justice, Not through laws that had failed her, but through power that answered to no one but itself. Was that wrong? Was it wrong to want the man who destroyed her life to face consequences? Was it wrong to accept help from someone whose methods the world condemned? Clara did not have answers. She only had the feeling that she had stepped onto a path from which there was no turning back, and the strange sense that maybe, just maybe, this was exactly where she was supposed to be. The next morning dawned clear for the first time in days, sunlight breaking through the clouds like a promise. Clara woke early, prepared breakfast, and told Sophia they were having a special day inside because the gardens were being worked on and could not be disturbed. Sophia accepted this explanation with the trust only children possess, immediately launching into plans for their indoor adventure. They would build a fort in the library. They would have a tea party with her stuffed animals. They would make a treasure map and hide things for each other to find. Clara went along with all of it, matching Sophia's enthusiasm while keeping one ear tuned to the movements of the household. She could feel the tension building as the day progressed, guards moving with purpose, vehicles arriving and departing, muffled voices in distant rooms. By late afternoon, the estate was locked down. Clara and Sophia had their tea party in a corner of the library, surrounded by towers of cushions and draped blankets, while the world outside prepared for war. "Clara," Sophia said suddenly, her small hands wrapped around a tiny teacup, "is Uncle Marcus in trouble?" Clara felt her heart clench. "Why do you ask that, sweetheart?" "I heard Mama talking to Aunt Maria on the phone. She sounded worried. And the guards are being extra serious today. They are not even laughing at my jokes." Clara reached out and tucked a curl behind Sophia's ear. "Your uncle is doing something very important tonight, something to help someone who needs him, but he is going to be fine. He is very strong and very smart, remember? The strongest and smartest person you know." "But what if the bad people hurt him?" "Your uncle has lots of friends helping him, and he has promised to always come back to you. He would never break a promise, would he?" Sophia shook her head slowly. "No. Uncle Marcus never breaks promises. Then we just have to trust him, and maybe send him some good thoughts while we wait. Do you know how to do that?" "Like wishes." "Exactly like wishes. Close your eyes and think about your uncle being safe and happy and coming home. The thought will find its way to him." Sophia closed her eyes, her small face scrunched in concentration. Clara watched her, feeling a fierce protectiveness that surprised her with its intensity. This child, this innocent soul, deserved a world free of fear and darkness. If staying in this house meant being part of the wall that protected her, Clara would accept that burden willingly. When Sophia opened her eyes, she looked calmer. "I did it. I sent him the biggest wish I have ever made." "Then I am sure he felt it. Now, should we find the treasure we hid earlier?" They played until dinner, until bath time, until the elaborate bedtime ritual that involved 3 stories and a glass of warm milk. By the time Sophia finally drifted off to sleep, Clara was exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with physical effort. She left Elena watching over her daughter and made her way back to the kitchen, needing the comfort of familiar space. The house was quiet, almost unnaturally so, the usual background hum of activity replaced by tense silence. She made herself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen island, watching the clock on the wall mark the passage of minutes that felt like hours. At 11:30, she heard vehicles pulling into the estate. At 11:45, she heard voices in the front hall. At midnight, the kitchen door opened and Marcus walked in. He looked exhausted. His suit was rumpled, his hair disheveled, and there was a cut above his left eyebrow that was still bleeding slightly. But he was alive. He was home. Clara stood without thinking, her chair scraping against the floor. "You are hurt." "It is nothing. Surface wound." He walked to the sink and ran water over his hands. The droplets tinged faint pink. "We got her. Anthony's sister. She is scared and needs medical attention, but she will recover." Relief flooded through Clara so intensely she had to grip the counter for support. And Anthony? Reunited with her an hour ago. The conversation about his future will happen tomorrow, but I have already decided. He will be demoted, reassigned to a position where he cannot access sensitive information, but he will remain with us. What he did was wrong, but his motivations were understandable. I will not destroy a man for loving his family too much. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Mercy. In a world that offered none, Marcus de Luca had chosen mercy. "You should sit," she said, her voice unsteady. "Let me clean that cut." "Clara, you do not... Please, let me help." Something in her tone made him pause. Then he nodded and sat on one of the kitchen stools, while Clara gathered the first aid kit from the cabinet. She worked in silence, gently cleaning the wound, applying antiseptic, securing a small bandage. This close, she could smell the night on him, see the fine lines of stress around his eyes, feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Thank you," he said quietly when she finished, "for this, and for Sophia." Eleanor said she was happy all day, completely unaware anything was wrong. "She sent you wishes. For your safety." She closed her eyes and concentrated as hard as she could. Marcus smiled, and Clara saw moisture gathering in his eyes that he blinked away. "That girl will save me. From myself, from this life, from everything. She already has 1,000 times over. She loves you. That kind of love is powerful." "It is the only thing that matters." He met her eyes. "Do you understand that, Clara? In the end, when everything else falls away, love is the only thing that matters. Not money, not power, not territory or reputation. Just the people who stay when they could leave. Just the loyalty that cannot be bought." Clara felt the weight of his words settle over her like a blanket. "I think I am beginning to understand." They stayed like that for a long moment, the kitchen wrapped in silence, the rest of the house holding its breath. Then Marcus stood, breaking the spell. "I should go. Debrief with my men. 100 things to handle before morning." He paused at the door. "But Clara, I wanted you to know the investigation into Gerald Whitmore is progressing. We have found evidence that links him to 3 separate arson-for-profit schemes. Your restaurant was not the first, and it was not the last." Clara felt her breath catch. 3? 3 that we have confirmed so far. My people believe there may be more. He is careful, but not careful enough. When we have everything we need, when the case is undeniable, you will have your justice." She nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging her throat. "Get some rest, Clara. Tomorrow the household returns to normal, and I suspect Sophia will want pancakes." He left, and Clara stood alone in the kitchen, her heart full of things she could not name. Justice was coming. The man who had destroyed her life would face consequences, and somewhere in the complexity of this world she had stumbled into, she had found something she had not expected. She had found people worth caring about. She had found purpose. She had found home. At this moment, I have to ask you something. If this story is touching your heart, if you feel something stirring inside you as you follow Clara's journey and Sophia's innocent light, I want you to do something for me. Right now, leave a comment that says, "Everyone deserves justice," that is all, just those 3 words. Because somewhere out there, someone watching this video needs to know they are not alone. Someone needs to know that strangers on the internet believe in fairness and redemption and the power of loyalty. Leave that comment. Let them see it. Let us build something together. The weeks that followed reshaped Clara's understanding of the De Luca household. What had seemed like a monolithic organization revealed itself to be a complex ecosystem of relationships, obligations, and carefully maintained balances. She learned that Marcus had inherited leadership of the family after his father's death 7 years ago, thrust into power at only 28 years old. She learned that the transition had been brutal, with rival factions testing the young boss at every turn, and that Marcus had earned his reputation for strategic brilliance by outmaneuvering enemies twice his age and experience. She learned that beneath the criminal enterprise lay legitimate businesses that employed thousands of people across the Chicago area. Construction companies, import-export firms, a chain of restaurants, real estate holdings. The line between legal and illegal was blurry, one feeding the other in ways that made separation nearly impossible. She learned that Marcus's devotion to family was not performance, but genuine. His sister Eleanor had nearly been kidnapped 5 years ago, and the security protocols that now surrounded the estate were the direct result of that terror. Sophia's father had been killed by rivals attempting to weaken Marcus through his loved ones. The fortress mentality of the household was not paranoia, but hard-won wisdom, and she learned slowly and unexpectedly that her feelings for Marcus DeLuca were becoming something more than professional respect or gratitude. It happened in small moments, the way he knelt to tie Sophia's shoes before school, his massive hands impossibly gentle. The way he asked Clara's opinion during informal household discussions, genuinely interested in what she thought. The way he remembered details she had mentioned in passing, favorite foods and preferred music, and the name of her grandmother who had taught her to cook. She tried to suppress it, told herself it was inappropriate, dangerous, impossible. He was her employer. He was a powerful man in a world that devoured weakness. She was a chef whose only value was her ability to prepare meals and keep a child entertained. But the heart does not listen to logic. It never has. One night, nearly 3 months after the confrontation that had started everything, Clara found herself unable to sleep. She wandered through the darkened house, eventually ending up in the library, drawn by the soft glow of a lamp she could see through the partially open door. Marcus sat in an armchair by the window, a book open in his lap, a glass of something amber at his elbow. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his features before settling into something warmer. "Cannot sleep? My mind will not quiet down. I thought maybe some reading would help." She gestured at the walls of books. "There seems to be no shortage of options." "Help yourself. My father built this collection over 40 years, everything from classic literature to military history to cookbooks." He smiled slightly. "Though I suspect the cookbooks are beneath your skill level." "You might be surprised. Even experienced chefs can learn from basics." She moved to a shelf, running her fingers along spines. "What are you reading?" "Marcus Aurelius. Meditations. Philosophy at midnight. That seems very on brand for you." He laughed, a genuine sound that made her heart skip. "Is it? What brand do you think I have?" "Thoughtful. Controlled. The kind of man who believes understanding himself is the key to understanding everyone else." "That is either very complimentary or deeply insulting. I cannot decide which." "Neither, just observation." She selected a book at random and took a seat across from him. "You think more than you speak. Watch more than you act. When you do act, it is decisive and final. But the thinking that comes before, that is where you really live." Marcus studied her with an intensity that made her skin warm. "You see a lot, Clara." "I see what you allow people to see, nothing more." "No, you see more than that. You see the parts I try to hide." He set his book aside. "It is unsettling. I have spent years building walls, controlling what people perceive, managing my image. And you walk in with your flower-covered apron and your genuine smile, and suddenly those walls feel transparent." Clara did not know what to say. The air between them had shifted, charged with something new and terrifying. "I should go," she said, starting to rise. "I should not have disturbed you." "Stay." The word was soft but unmistakable. "Please." She sank back into her chair. "Why?" "Because I have read this same paragraph 15 times, and I still cannot tell you what it says. Because sleep will not come for me either. Because you are the first person in years who talks to me like I am human, instead of something to be feared or used. You are human. Anyone who spends time with you can see that. Not anyone. Most people see the boss, the criminal, the man who orders violence and holds lives in his hands. They do not see the person who stays up at night worrying about his niece's nightmares, or who cannot forgive himself for the men he has lost, or who wonders every single day if he is becoming a monster." Clara felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "You are not a monster. How do you know?" Because monsters do not worry about being monsters. They do not show mercy to men who betray them, because those men were trying to save their sisters. They do not launch investigations to find justice for their household chef. They do not read philosophy. At midnight, searching for answers. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice rough with emotion. My father told me something before he died. He said that power is a test, and most men fail it. They let it corrupt them, twist them, turn them into something unrecognizable. He said the only way to pass the test was to remember why you wanted power in the first place, to protect what you love, to build something that will outlast you, to make the world safer for the people who depend on you. He met Clara's eyes. I try to remember that, every day. But some days the weight is so heavy, I do not know if I can carry it anymore. Without thinking, Clara rose and crossed the space between them. She knelt beside his chair and took his hand in hers. You do not have to carry it alone. He looked down at their joined hands, then back at her face. In the soft lamplight, his eyes were the color of deep water, full of currents she could not read. You have no idea what you are saying, and then tell me, help me understand. If I do, there is no going back. You will be part of this world, truly, not as staff who can walk away, but as someone who knows, who is trusted, who matters. That is a burden, Clara, not a gift. What if I want it anyway? The question hung between them. Marcus reached out with his free hand and cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with impossible tenderness. Then you are either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both. He smiled, and Clara felt something click into place inside her. A piece of herself she had not known was missing. They stayed like that for a long time, not speaking, just existing in each other's presence. Eventually, Marcus pressed a kiss to her forehead, gentle and chaste and full of promise. Go to sleep, Clara. We will talk more tomorrow. Is that a dismissal? It is a gift. Time to think, to be certain. When you come back to me, I want to know it is real. She rose, still holding his hand for one more moment. It is already real, but I understand. He let her go, and she walked out of the library with her heart racing and her mind spinning. At the door, she paused and looked back. Marcus, for what it is worth, I think you are passing the test. I think your father would be proud. She did not wait for a response, but as she made her way back to her room, she could have sworn she heard him say, quietly, to himself or to the ghost of the man who had shaped him, I hope so. The next morning, everything continued as before. Clara made breakfast. Sophia had her pancakes. The household hummed with its daily rhythms, but beneath the surface, everything had changed. Clara caught Marcus's eyes across the dining room and felt electricity course through her. He nodded slightly, a private acknowledgement that what had passed between them was not forgotten. Their relationship began to shift in ways too subtle for others to notice, but impossible for them to ignore. A hand brushing against a hand, a shared smile at one of Sophia's antics, conversations that started about practical matters and wandered into philosophy and history and dreams. Marcus began finding reasons to visit the kitchen. Clara began finding reasons to stay late in common areas where their paths might cross. One evening, 3 weeks after the library, he invited her to dinner in his private dining room. Not the grand table where business was conducted, but a smaller room with a fireplace and intimate lighting and a view of the city lights in the distance. You cooked this yourself? She asked, surveying the perfectly prepared meal with a professional eye. I did. Is that so surprising? A little. I assumed you had staff for everything. I enjoy cooking. It was one of the few things my mother taught me before she died. She said that preparing food for people you love is an act of devotion, that the care you put into a meal transfers to the person who eats it. Clara felt her heart soften. Further, she sounds wise. She was kinder than this world deserved. She died when I was 12. Cancer, slow and terrible and merciless. He paused. I think everything I have built since then has been an attempt to create a world where kindness is not a weakness, where people like her would not be taken so unfairly. That is a beautiful motivation. It does not always lead to beautiful actions. No. But perfection is not the goal. Progress is. Trying is. Getting up every day and choosing to be better than you were yesterday. Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. Stay with me tonight. Clara felt her breath catch. What do you mean? Not what you think. I mean, stay. Talk. Let me learn you the way you have been learning me. I am tired of stolen moments and careful distances. I want to know you, Clara. All of you. She looked at their joined hands, at his face softened by firelight, at the walls around his heart that he was slowly, carefully dismantling, just for her. Yes, she said. I will stay. They talked until dawn, about her childhood, her parents, the grandmother who had shaped her love of food, about his father's lessons, and his mother's death, and the choices that had led him down this path, about fears and hopes and the places where they intersected. When morning light began to filter through the windows, Marcus walked her to her room. At the door, he kissed her for the first time, not on the forehead this time, but on the lips, soft and slow, and full of everything words could not capture. Tomorrow, he said when they finally parted. Everything changes tomorrow. What do you mean? The investigation into Gerald Whitmore is complete. We have enough to destroy him, and I want you there when it happens. I want you to see justice finally served. Clara felt tears spill down her cheeks. 2 years of waiting. 2 years of believing she would never have closure. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for not letting me give up. You never gave up. You just needed someone to fight alongside you. He wiped her tears with gentle thumbs. Now rest. Tomorrow, we end this chapter of your story, and we begin a new one. Together. Gerald Whitmore lived in a townhouse in Lincoln Park that cost more than Clara's restaurant had earned in its best year. The building was old and elegant, all brick and black iron and windows that gleamed in the afternoon sun. Clara sat in the back of a black sedan, Marcus beside her, watching the front door from half a block away. He will be arriving in 10 minutes, Marcus said, checking his phone. His assistant confirmed his schedule. A board meeting downtown, then home for his afternoon gin and tonic. Like clockwork. You have been watching him for months. I have been watching him since the day you told me his name. A man does not become this careless by accident. He believes himself untouchable. That kind of arrogance leaves traces. Clara's hands were trembling. She had dreamed of this moment so many times, imagined all the things she would say, the questions she would ask. Now that it was real, she felt only a cold, hard knot in her stomach. What happens now? We wait for him to enter his home. Then we follow. My people have ensured there will be no interruptions. Marcus turned to face her fully. Clara, I need you to understand something. This is not revenge. This is justice. There is a difference. What difference? Revenge is emotional, uncontrolled. It makes you feel good in the moment but leaves you empty afterward. Justice is deliberate, measured. It restores balance. When we walk out of that townhouse, I want you to feel free. Not satisfied, not vindicated, but free. Do you understand? She nodded slowly. I think so. He will have a chance to answer for what he has done. He will have a chance to explain, to confess, to face the consequences. What happens after that depends on him. A sleek silver car pulled up to the townhouse. Gerald Whitmore emerged, a man in his 60s with silver hair and a tailored suit, carrying himself with the confidence of someone who had never faced a challenge he could not buy his way out of. Clara watched him walk up the steps, unlock his door, disappear inside. Now, Marcus said. They exited the car together. 2 of Marcus's men fell in behind them, silent shadows whose presence was more deterrent than threat. The walk to the townhouse felt endless and instantaneous at once. Marcus produced a key. Clara did not ask how he had obtained it. The interior of the townhouse was exactly what she had expected: antiques and oil paintings and the suffocating smell of old money. They moved through the entryway to the study, where Whitmore sat in a leather chair with a glass already in hand. He looked up when they entered. Confusion, then recognition, then something that might have been fear flickered across his features. "DeLuca, what is the meaning of this?" "Mr. Whitmore, please, stay seated. We are not here for unpleasantness." Marcus took a chair across from him, relaxed and comfortable. "We are here to talk about business." "I have no business with you." "You have more business with me than you realize." Marcus gestured, and one of his men placed a thick folder on the table between them. 3 buildings, 3 fires, 3 insurance claims totaling over $12 million, and 3 business owners whose lives were destroyed because they had the audacity to exercise their legal rights. "So against you?" Whitmore's face went pale. "I do not know what you are talking about." "Yes, you do." Marcus opened the folder, spreading photographs and documents across the table. Montrose Avenue, Harper Street, Industrial Plaza, all properties you owned. All fires ruled accidental. All preceded by lease disputes you lost. Clara stepped forward, her voice steady despite the trembling in her core. "My restaurant was on Montrose Avenue. 8 years of my life. Everything I had. And you burned it. To the ground because I would not let you steal from me." Whitmore looked at her for the first time and she saw recognition dawn. "The chef, Clara Reyes." "Yes, the chef. The nobody. The woman who was not important enough for the police to listen to or the insurance company to believe." She picked up one of the photographs, a shot of her restaurant before the fire, tables set and windows gleaming. "You took this from me, and now you are going to answer for it." "You cannot prove anything. Those investigations were closed years ago." "Closed by investigators you paid off," Marcus said calmly, "but we have different resources. Witness statements from contractors who installed faulty electrical systems on your orders. Financial records showing payments to an arson specialist based in Milwaukee. Communication records that place you in contact with that specialist within 48 hours of each fire." Whitmore's glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. "What do you want? Money? I can write a check right now, whatever amount. Name your price." "I do not want your money." Clara leaned forward. "I want to know why. Why me? Why destroy everything I built when you could have just accepted the court's ruling and moved on?" Whitmore's composure cracked further. "You embarrassed me. A woman, a nobody, dragging me through court like I was some common landlord. My colleagues laughed, said Gerald Whitmore got beaten by a chef. That could not stand. I had to make an example." "An example?" Clara let the word hang in the air. "You ruined 3 lives, destroyed 3 businesses, cost people their livelihoods, their savings, their futures, because you were embarrassed. It was business, nothing personal. It was personal to me. It was personal to the other owners whose dreams you burned. You made it personal the moment you decided your pride mattered more than our lives." Marcus rose, buttoning his jacket. "Mr. Whitmore, you have 2 choices. The first is to sign a full confession, which my lawyer will file with the appropriate authorities tomorrow morning. You will face charges for arson, insurance fraud, and conspiracy. Given your age and resources, you might manage house arrest. Your reputation will be destroyed, your assets frozen, your name synonymous with crime. But you will live." Whitmore swallowed hard. "And the second choice?" "The second choice is that you refuse, and I make phone calls to people who would very much like to know how. You have been laundering money through your real estate holdings for the past decade. Those people do not use lawyers and courts. They use more permanent solutions." The color drained completely from Whitmore's face. "You would not." "I would not prefer to, but I will if necessary." Marcus placed a pen on the table next to the confession document. "The choice is yours." The silence stretched. Clara watched Whitmore's hands shake, watched the arrogance crumble, watched the man who had stolen her. Life realized that he was finally completely out of options. He picked up the pen. He signed. Marcus collected the document and handed it to one of his men. Our lawyer will be in touch with the authorities by morning. I suggest you use the time to contact your own legal representation." They turned to leave. At the door, Clara stopped and looked back. "Mr. Whitmore, I want you to know something. For 2 years, I dreamed about this moment. About seeing you face consequences. About watching you finally understand what you took from me." She paused. "But standing here now, I do not feel satisfaction. I feel sad. Sad that someone with so much could care so little about others. Sad that ego and pride led you to destroy instead of build. I hope whatever time you have left teaches you something about what actually matters in life." She walked out without waiting for a response. In the car, driving away from Lincoln Park, she finally allowed herself to cry. Not tears of triumph or even relief, but tears of release. Years of anger and helplessness and grief pouring out in shuddering waves. Marcus held her hand but said nothing. He understood that some moments required silence more than words. When the tears finally subsided, Clara looked up at the man who had made this possible. The man who had seen her pain and refused to let it go unanswered. The man who, against all odds and expectations, had become someone she loved. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything. You did this, Clara. You survived. You refused to forget. You kept the fire burning long enough for justice to find its way. I just provided resources. You provided more than that. You provided belief, when I had none left." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Then we are even, because you have given me something I thought I would never have again. Hope, for myself, for the future, for the possibility that this life does not have to end in darkness." They rode in silence through the streets of Chicago, the city sprawling around them in all its chaos and beauty. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his breathing. Tomorrow, Gerald Whitmore would face the consequences of his actions. Tomorrow, the world would learn that justice was not just for the powerful and connected. Tomorrow, a new chapter would begin. But tonight, Clara allowed herself to simply exist in the present, in the peace of this moment, in the arms of a man who had shown her that even in the darkest places, light could find a way. 6 months later, Clara stood in the kitchen of the DeLuca estate, preparing dinner for 30 people. Not household staff this time, but guests, family friends, business associates, the inner circle that Marcus trusted enough to invite into his home. The occasion was an engagement party, hers. The ring on her finger still felt surreal sometimes, a delicate band of diamonds and sapphires that caught the light whenever she moved her hand. Marcus had proposed on the rooftop garden 3 months ago, under a sky full of stars, and with Sophia serving as their only witness. "Is it really happening?" Sophia had asked, bouncing on her heels. "Are you really going to be my aunt?" "I am really going to be your aunt," Clara had confirmed, laughing and crying at the same time. Now the little girl darted in and out of the kitchen, officially assigned as Clara's assistant, but mostly just sampling ingredients and offering commentary. "The sauce needs more of that green stuff," Sophia announced, pointing at the fresh basil. "You think so?" "Definitely. Uncle Marcus loves the green stuff." Clara added more basil. Sophia beamed with pride. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, elegant in a blue dress that matched her daughter's eyes. "How are things progressing in here?" "We are almost ready. 20 minutes, maybe. The guests are arriving. Marcus is handling introductions, but he keeps looking toward the kitchen. I think he is anxious to see you." Clara felt warmth spread through her chest. Even now, after months of growing together, his attention still made her feel like the most important person in any room. "Tell him I will be out soon. I just need to finish the presentation." Perfectionist. Elena smiled and disappeared back to the party. The evening unfolded like something from a dream. Clara moved through the rooms on Marcus's arm, accepting congratulations and well wishes from people whose names she was still learning. The men were respectful, almost deferential, clearly understanding that the woman beside their boss was no longer just staff. The women were warmer, pulling her aside for private conversations about wedding planning and what it was like to fall in love with someone from this world. She learned that several of them had similar stories, outsiders who had found their way into the family through circumstance and stayed because of love. "It changes you," said Maria, wife of one of Marcus's senior advisors. "This life, but not always in the ways you expect. I thought I would have to become harder. Instead, I found people softer than I imagined. The men act tough because they have to, but at home, with family, they are just men, husbands, fathers, people who want the same things everyone else wants. Safety, belonging, love," Clara said. "Exactly. And Marcus, he is one of the good ones, truly. You are lucky to have found him. I think he found me. Sometimes it happens that way. The best things often do." Later, after the formal dinner and the toasts and the dancing, Clara found herself alone with Marcus on the rooftop garden, the same place he had proposed, their place now. "How are you feeling?" he asked, pulling her close. "Overwhelmed, happy, terrified? About what?" "All of it. The wedding, the future, becoming part of this family officially." She looked up at him. "I keep waiting to wake up, to realize this was all a dream, and I am still in my tiny apartment alone, working jobs I hate to pay bills I cannot manage. It is not a dream, I promise you that." He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. "And the fear is normal. I feel it too." "You? Afraid? Of what?" "Of failing you. Of not being the man you deserve. Of letting this world hurt you because I was not careful enough or strong enough to protect you." His arms tightened around her. "You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, Clara. When I think about losing you, I cannot breathe." She cupped his face in her hands. "You are not going to lose me. I chose this, I chose you, and I would choose you again 1,000 times, knowing everything I know now." "Even the hard parts?" "Especially the hard parts. They are what made you who you are. Without them, you would not be the man I fell in love with." They stood in silence, wrapped in each other, watching the city lights flicker below them. Chicago sprawled to the horizon, a million stories playing out in a million windows. Somewhere out there, Gerald Whitmore was serving a sentence for his crimes, his empire dismantled and his name disgraced. The other business owners he had hurt had received settlements that could not undo their losses, but at least acknowledged them. Somewhere out there, Anthony was rebuilding his life, still part of the family, but in a diminished role, his sister safe and healing from her ordeal. And here, on this rooftop, a woman who had lost everything had found more than she ever imagined. A home, a family, a love that defied every obstacle the world had thrown at it. "I have something for you," Marcus said, pulling away slightly to reach into his pocket. He produced a small velvet box, different from the one that had held her engagement ring. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside was a key, simple, bronze, old-fashioned. "I do not understand." "There is a property on Montrose Avenue, 3 doors down from where your restaurant stood. It has been empty for years, waiting for the right owner." He smiled. "I bought it. For you. If you want to rebuild, if you want to cook for people again on your own terms, the space is yours. But only if you want it. This is not about replacing what you lost. It is about giving you the choice." Clara stared at the key, tears blurring her vision. "You bought me a restaurant. I bought you an option. What you do with it is entirely up to you." She threw her arms around him, sobbing into his chest. For 2 years, she had mourned not just a building but a dream. The dream of feeding people, of creating experiences, of building something that mattered. She had convinced herself that dream was dead, and here it was, resurrected. Not the same, never the same, but something new, something that could grow from the ashes of the old. "I love you," she said, when she could finally speak. "I love you so much it scares me." "I love you too, and nothing about this love has to be scary. We will face everything together, always." They stayed on the rooftop until the stars began to fade and the first hints of dawn touched the horizon. A new day, a new beginning. Below them, the household was waking up. Sophia would be demanding pancakes soon. Eleanor would be reviewing the night's success. The guards would be changing shifts. Life would continue in its endless cycle of moments, both ordinary and extraordinary. And Clara would be part of it, not as an outsider looking in, but as family, as partner, as home. She took Marcus's hand and walked back inside, ready to face whatever came next. If you have watched this far, it is because you felt something in this story, because Clara's journey touched a place inside you that understands what it means to lose and to find again. Because you believe that even in the darkest worlds, love can light the way home. I want to know you. I want to see who really stays until the end, who really connects with these stories. So please leave a comment right now that says, I have watched this far. That is all, just those 4 words. Let me see you, let me know you are real. And if this story meant something to you, if you want more stories like this one, hit the like button. It takes 1 second, but it tells me that this is the kind of content you want to see. Share this video with someone who needs it, someone who believes in second chances and redemption and the power of love to change everything. And if you have not already, please subscribe to this channel. Every week, we bring stories that grip your heart and do not let go. Stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. Stories about the moments that define us and the choices that transform us. You are not just a viewer to me. You are part of this community, part of this family, and I am so grateful you chose to spend this time with us. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and never stop believing that your story matters. Because it does. It always does.